Welcome to Staff Works Explained. If you are here for the first time, please consider subscribing to this channel. Watch other videos that we have done on various topics, and leave a comment. In today's video, we'll be talking about Democratic Republic of Congo oil and gas sector. We'll look at the first oil and gas reserves in the DRC, the developments in auctioning of the oil fields, the DRC idea of ECOP partnership, opposition to the auctioning of the oil and gas fields in the DRC, postponement of the auction, a report by Greenpeace organization, and the reaction from various sectors, and also look at what options are available for DRC if it forgoes these lucrative industry. Oil and gas discovery in the east of the country have given Democratic Republic of Congo the second largest crude oil reserves in Central and Southern Africa, that is after Angola, which has the largest. These reserves are primarily located in 4 major lakes bordering Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, and Uganda. DRC has proven reserves of 180 million barrels, although estimates of total petroleum reserves exceed 5 billion barrels. Currently, Congolese oil production is limited to the coast basin, which yields 25,000 barrels per day of offshore production, all of which is exported. Along with largely recently identified oil fields, the DRC may hold as many as 30 billion cubic meters of methane and natural gas in the 3 major petroleum deposits. Lake Kivu, which borders Rwanda and Burundi, has nearly 60 billion cubic meters of dissolved methane in its waters. Methane is already being extracted in the Rwandan side of the lake through a biogas power plant in Rwanda, which is generating 30 to 40 megawatts of electricity. Beyond the estimated 60 billion cubic meters of methane in Lake Kivu, the lake also generates as much as 250 cubic meters of methane annually. Opportunities are many in this country of DRC. There are currently 3 major oil companies which are conducting extractive operations in DRC. We have Anglo-French firm Parenco, which is conducting offshore oil extraction in the Atlantic Ocean off coast of Muanda in the Congo Central. We have French oil company Total and DRC Parastatal Cohydro, which is conducting exploratory and preliminary extractive operation in eastern DRC. Let's look at development in the auctioning of the oil fields. Licensing rights for 30 oil and gas blocks in DRC of Congo went up for auction recently. That was in 2022. This process was aimed at opening parts of the world's second biggest rainforest to draining that could release large amount of carbon into the atmosphere, and according to the environmentalists or climate activists, this could jeopardize climate goals to tame global warming. President Felix Tshisekedi presided over the launch of the bidding at a ceremony which was held in Kinshasa. Those who attended the auction included representatives from TotalEnergies of France and several domestic companies, although TotalEnergies later came to withdraw, saying that they will not participate in this bidding, and I will see the reason why they did this. According to President Felix Tshisekedi, the launch of a tendering process, he said, speaks to the DRC desire to put their resources potential at the service of their country, and fossil fuel production would boost development in DRC. The president said during the opening of this auction that modern drilling methods and tight regulations would minimize the ecological impact, and he also denied that Congo was going back on its commitment to protect the rainforest. DRC is looking into partnership with ECOP. ECOP is East African Crude Oil Pipeline, which is being constructed from the oil fields in Uganda to Tanga in Tanzania for purpose of evacuating oil in Uganda. So the DRC has started discussions with neighboring Uganda for possible use of East African countries' planned crude oil pipeline to export petroleum. So this is in preparation of since DRC has discovered, or there is huge potential of oil in this country. So they are looking for ways into which this oil can be extracted. So they have started with auctioning. Now they are looking for ways through which probably this oil will be evacuated if it ever happens that it will be drilled. So this crude oil pipeline is 3.5 billion project, which covers a distance of 1,443 kilometers, of which about 285 will be in Uganda, and the rest 1,000 and some few kilometers will be in Tanzania. So DRC is looking to partner with the two countries, Uganda and Tanzania, for purpose of evacuating its oil if it will be drilled. The DRC Ministry of Hydrocarbons said in a Twitter statement later on Tuesday that that the Minister of Hydrocarbons met with Uganda counterpart, and where they held discussions involving access to pipeline. He said Uganda acknowledged the crucial requirement of DRC to access ECOP for the transport of the crude oil to be produced from the oil exploration blocks located in Albert and Graben in the DRC region. The DRC and Uganda share these oil-rich basin of Albert and Graben. Technical teams from both sides have been discussing and preparing reports which are to be presented to the two ministers, and they are to create and even lead to development of an MOU. A spokesman for Uganda Energy Minister confirmed that they have been holding talks and has said that ECOP has been designed for potential use by Uganda neighbors, including DRC and South Sudan. Uganda and Tanzania are confident they will secure funding for this project, which has been delayed for some time. All along, although there are those developments, there are fears that Congo oil fields are quickly becoming uninsurable. This is according to the statement which was released by Greenpeace Africa, which is an activist organization that is opposed to oil exploration in this region, which is described as sensitive. According to a recent report published by groups which are opposed to oil and gas auctions in the sensitive areas in the DRC, companies granted exploration and exploitation rights in the DRC may struggle to obtain insurance coverage for their operations. Greenpeace Africa, Insure Our Future, Reclaim Finance, Uja World, and other companies or other organizations in the report indicated that insurance and reinsurance companies may be reluctant to provide coverage for environmentally and socially destructive oil extraction plants in the DRC. This report emphasized that leading insurers and reinsurers should follow their commitment and ESG or environmental, social, and governance policies, potentially making insurance for DRC oil exploration prohibitively expensive. This to discourage these companies from going ahead and drilling oil. Concerns have been raised about oil companies willing to extract oil in the DRC, including in a war zone, and even sacrificing global biodiversity and climate goals, and disregarding the rights of indigenous people and local communities, as well as concerns about corruption and illegality. And these all go against environmental, social, and governance policies. The report, which was titled Blood Oil, Ensuring the DRC Oil Exploration is Underwriting the Destruction of the Congo Forest. This report analyzes insurance and reinsurance firms' commitment and the general ECG policies related to the DRC oil and gas auction. The report discussed the risk of absent, free, prior and informed consent of indigenous people and local communities in designated oil blocks. The fact that DRC lacks domestic capacity to provide insurance for oil exploration due to high risk involved. Major insurance and reinsurance companies are mainly concentrated in Europe and North America and have either excluded oil exploration and extraction in the DRC from their coverage or imposed general restrictions. 4 insurance companies have even withdrawn their insurance capacity for DRC exploration, potentially affecting the cost for companies bidding for exploration rights. So it will be difficult for companies which will be bidding for oil in these areas which are sensitive to get insurance or insurance, which are crucial as far as their business is concerned. So this is one of the challenges that these companies will face. And from an environmental point of view, it is a positive move because these companies moving to this type of business, because there's going to be an effect as far as drilling and bidding of oil in these areas is concerned. The auction, which was started in 2022 due to opposition from various quarters, had to be postponed. DRC postponed the auction of the 30 blocks and 3 gas, which were 27 oil blocks and 3 gas blocks, which are located in the protected rainforest. And this was mainly due to pressure from various quarters, including the environmentalists. These blocks are spread across various regions of the country, with the oil blocks holding proven reserves of 180 million barrels and potential reserves exceeding 5 billion barrels. Currently, the DRC, as we said, is only producing 25,000 barrels per day, and all of this is exported. Initially, the Congolese government had planned to auction 16 oil blocks out of the 30 to oil farms, but now it appears that with the rising demands or other factors, the DRC increased that to 30. The Minister for Hydrocarbons of DRC said that the sale of all these blocks was expected to bring $2 billion to the treasury. Hydrocarbon Minister vowed to support oil companies which are interested in the drilling in the DRC. He acknowledged that there are concerns about environment, but they will go ahead but ensure that they protect the natural resources, although he didn't say how. He reiterated that the people of his country have the right to benefit from their the wealth. And in reference to outside forces that have opposed to the oil and gas, he said that people must understand that that DRC is free, it's a sovereign nation, and they will exploit their natural resources. The DRC Environmental Minister also defended the fossil fuel bonanza, saying that nobody can put pressure on them. She added that no convention in the world, not even Paris Agreement, forbids any country from emitting carbon dioxide for development purposes. And those who think, she said that those who think that the oil blocks pose a problem should come and reassess. She further assured critics that an environmental impact assessment of oil drilling would be carried out prior to auctioning of the oil blocks, and if they think it could destroy the environment, they will leave it in the ground. So this pressure that was mounting and led to postponement of the oil block auction, with the government revealing plans to unveil the list of multinational companies which were bidding, and they postponed, and they said that they are going to do it later. They had planned to do it between April and October 2023. It has not happened. So although there are reports that there are 3 blocks that were auctioned secretly to US and Canadian companies in the rainforest. Environmentalists strongly oppose the auction and impending oil drilling, and they have emphasized that we need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground. They argue that such auctions are detrimental to climate efforts, and they have urged the Congolese government to abandon oil exploration in these protected areas. Even several multinational oil giants like France TotalEnergies opted out of the controversial oil projects, and this was in response to environmental backlash. However, some companies like Chevron, Tullow Oil, Perenco have not publicly disclosed their bidding intentions. Greenpeace Africa has highlighted the importance of transition away from the fossil fuels to address the climate change in the 21st century. In their report, which they did just before the oil auction started, Greenpeace voiced the opposition of the local communities in the DRC to the government large-scale oil and gas auction, which was launched in July 2022. Several environmentalist organizations, which include Greenpeace Africa, 350 Africa Organization, Rainforest Rescue, and even other Congolese NGOs, documented the concerns and resistance of these communities within the area which are targeted. These concerns include lack of consent, the environmental and social impacts, where the report emphasized that the oil and gas auctions posed a significant threat to the global peace, biodiversity, and well-being of the Congolese people. They highlighted the potential for disease, conflict, poverty, corruption, and which is associated with oil exploration. The other concern is extent of auctioned areas, where they cover a vast area of 277,000 square kilometers, which include peatlands and protected areas such as Virunga National Park, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Local communities' voices, where the report provided insights into perspective of local communities living in the auctioned area. Residents expressed their disappointment with the government neglect of their rights and environment. They argue that the auction was conducted secretly without consideration for their villages, wildlife, and ecosystem. The other concern is on environmental and health risks, where the report highlighted the lack of clean drinking water in the visited villages, with communities relying on local rivers. It estimates that more than 1 million people could be impacted by oil pollution and waterborne diseases. Pollution could also threaten food security in the region. There is also economic impact, where local livelihoods, including those of fishermen and farmers, would be devastated by oil exploration, drilling, and leading to economic and social disruptions. There are concerns about what quote-unquote slaves, where the local population fears becoming slaves to oil companies, and they anticipate new social conflict in the once exploration begins. They are not ready to welcome an oil company and fear the destruction of their environment. Then there are legal and ethical concerns, where the report questions the legality of the oil and gas auction, suggesting that nearly half of the blocks appear to have been auctioned without following the official procedures. It also raised concerns about the auction compliance with environmental and conservation laws in DRC. The report called on the DRC government to cancel its plans for oil and gas exploration and promote investment in renewable energies to address energy poverty affecting millions of Congolese. It also appealed to the donor community, urging the countries to, especially those who have entered into agreement with DRC related to forest protection and oil and gas activity, to work with the government on alternatives and condemn the impact of human rights, rule of law, and the environment. They also appealed to financial institutions which are considering to support oil and gas development in the DRC, reminding them of the need to obtain free, prior, and informed consent of the potentially affected community. There was also a reaction from the United States. U.S. climate envoy John Kerry said Washington had asked DRC to abandon some oil blocks that it put for auction in sensitive environmental areas. Speaking to reporters at the pre-COP 27 climate talks in Kinshasa, Kerry said that US had asked DRC government to withdraw some tracts to protect the forest. The former US Secretary of State also said there was a way to provide employment and economic development without putting sensitive areas such as really critical peatlands at risk. Kerry said that there is a need for a balance. One question that is arising is, out of all these, DRC intention to auction and even go ahead and exploit oil in some of these sensitive areas, and also then the opposition that is coming from different sides, especially from environmentalists. So one question is which is arising is whether DRC should forego drilling and in exchange get compensation from the richer countries. So this question, whether DRC should forego drilling for oil and gas in exchange for compensation from richer countries, this is a complex question which has no easy answer. There are a number of factors to be considered, including DRC economic needs, environmental impacts of drilling, and potential benefits of compensation. On one hand, the DRC is one of the poorest countries in the world, and its economy is heavily dependent on natural resources. Drilling for oil and gas could generate significant revenue for the country, which would be used to fund development projects and improve lives of the citizens. Additionally, the DRC has significant oil and gas reserves, which means that it has the potential to become a major energy producer. This could give the DRC more economic clout and political influence in the world. On the other hand, drilling for oil and gas can have significant negative impact on the environment. It can pollute the air, water, and introduce and even contribute to climate change. Additionally, the DRC is home to a number of unique and biodiverse ecosystems which could be damaged by drilling. It is important to consider the potential benefit of compensation. If the DRC were to forego drilling in exchange for compensation from richer countries, it could free up resources that could be used to invest in renewable energy and other sustainable initiatives. Additionally, compensation could help the DRC to adapt to the effects of climate change, which is already having a significant impact on the country. DRC is skeptical of the idea of compensation, and they are citing the example of Ecuador, which requested for $3.6 billion to offset revenue lost by not drilling in its Yasuni National Park. The initiative was scrapped in 2013 after it brought less than 4% of the requested amount. Ecuador had requested for $3.6 billion to offset revenue which was lost for not drilling in the national park. But this initiative did not go ahead because it only raised 4% of the requested amount. So drilling began 3 years later. 10 years ago, Ecuador was in similar position that DRC currently finds itself. Recognizing the potential economic benefit of the oil and the environmental harm of extracting and burning it, the Ecuador former president Rafael Correa proposed the idea more than a decade ago that wealthy nations should pay Ecuador to preserve national park. Yasuni National Park spans about 2.5 million acres and houses 610 species of birds. 139 of these species are amphibians and 121 species are reptiles. According to a study from 2010, just 1 hectare of land in the forest contains more trees species than are sensitive to the continent of US and Canada combined. A single hectare in Yasuni also boasts more than 100,000 insect species. So you can see the type of biodiversity that is found in this sensitive forest or national park of Ecuador. And the government of Ecuador wanted to drill oil in these, but they were opposition, and then they proposed the idea that we should be compensated for us to forego this. That did not happen. So this park is home also to indigenous Waorani and Kichwa communities, as well as the Tagaeri, Dugakeri, and other indigenous groups which live in isolation in Ecuador. But the forest also holds the current country's largest oil reserves, just like in DRC. And some people in Ecuador have argued that denied access to these resources would damage the country's economies. And these are the same arguments that are in DRC, that if DRC is able to exploit this oil, then this oil can add some benefits economically to this country. That's the same argument that was being presented in Ecuador. The energy minister of Ecuador, Fernando dos Santos, at that time told the local radio that losses that would amount from not drilling oil in this region would be in tunes of $1.2 billion every year if oil was left in the ground. Ecuador government relied on oil for more than a third of its revenue. So you see the contribution that oil was to bring, and you see the dilemma that the country was in. But support for this plan for compensation among the international governments was not going well. After 7 years, only $13 million had been lent. Had been collected out of a goal of $3.6 billion. And in 2014, Ecuador decided that they would not go ahead with that compensation plan, and they decided to move ahead with drilling. In 2016, the state oil company officially started extracting oil from this forest. In opposition, the oil extraction activist groups, which had been fighting for decades to get Yasuni referendum, came up, and it started a call for this to stop. Then in May 2023, Ecuador's Supreme Court ruled that the government should include a vote on drilling in the next election, where people were to vote on whether this drilling or this exploitation of oil should continue. Prior to this vote, international human rights organization Survival International called drilling in the uncontacted tribes' territory a huge threat to their survival. Yet not all indigenous people were in agreement on the referendum. 16 communities living in and around the park supported the oil industry, saying that it brought development and stability. But other groups and major organizations representing indigenous people have been on the front lines in the fight against. With more than 90% of the ballots counted during that referendum, the results were about 6 in every 10 voters rejected drilling in Yasuni area. Voters also cast ballot in that election. They were also voting for the president. And this referendum came as climate change is increasing wildfires, heat waves, and flooding across the world. And the environmentalists are urging government to turn away from fossil fuels and switch to renewables. So the ballot measure applied to just one section of Yasuni National Park, known as Block 43. And activists are planning to oppose drilling in other areas. So this is a concerted move that has been led by international organization, and also local indigenous communities, where they don't want some sections of the Yasuni National Park to be drilled for oil purposes. So they are opposed to it. So Ecuador was facing the similar problems as DRC is currently facing, where they want to probably exploit this oil for purpose of boosting the economic development. But this poses a very great risk, because some of the oil fields are located in sensitive areas. So as DRC thinks about auction of oil and gas fields on one hand and compensation on the other, there are some other factors that it needs to consider. DRC needs to consider it is a signatory to Paris Agreement on Climate Change, which commits countries to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions Drilling for oil and gas would make it more difficult for DRC to make its commitment under the agreement. DRC also need to consider that it is home to a number of indigenous people who rely on the forest for their livelihoods. Drilling for oil and gas could displace these communities and damage their traditional way of life. The DRC government has a history of corruption and mismanagement, so there is a risk that any compensation that is made would be misused and even embezzled. And even it's not certain that with exploration of oil in these sensitive areas, that it will largely go towards benefit of the country or benefits of the people in these areas. One of the compensation offer that DRC is considering is the deal with CAFI. CAFI is Central Africa Forest Initiative. During climate change conference of parties COP26 in UK, Central Africa Forest Initiative and DRC endorsed an ambitious 10-year agreement to protect the Congo Basin rainforest. This was in recognition that DRC forests represent 10% of the world tropical forest. Its peatlands cover 100,000 kilometers squared and are the largest in the world. Its ecosystem offers carbon absorption service equivalent to 10 years of global emission. The Congo Basin is one of the last regions in the world to absorb more carbon than it emits. Its forest, the second largest in the world after Amazon, absorbs nearly 1.5 billion tons of CO2 from the atmosphere every year, or 4% of the global emissions. Supported by the European countries, the Republic of Korea, European Union, and UK, the Central Africa Forest Initiative, CAFI, is a United Nations trust fund and policy dialogue platform that aims to support 6 Central Africa countries in pursuing a low-emission development pathway that ensures economic growth and poverty reduction while protecting the forest and natural resources. The main message regarding the compensation option available to the DRC to limit oil and gas activities in sensitive areas is that DRC, in collaboration with the Central Africa Forest Initiative, has endorsed an ambitious 10-year agreement covering between 2021 and 2031, and this is aimed at protecting the Congo Basin forest. This agreement recognizes the immense environmental value of the DRC forest and peatlands, which play a vital role in carbon absorption and mitigation of climate change. In essence, entering into CAFI deal, DRC is conveying its commitment to preserving its valuable natural resources and contributing to global climate goals. The agreement with CAFI underscores the importance of sustainable development and responsible natural resource management, while also acknowledging the significance of DRC forests and peatlands in the fight against climate change. Compensation through international collaboration and initiatives like CAFI will play a crucial role in achieving these conservation and climate objectives. It is also important to consider that even if an investment do pour in when the auction happens, there is no guarantee that it will benefit the Congolese people. We know that Congo or DRC is already a mining powerhouse in its own right. It produces large amount of copper, cobalt, gold, diamonds, and many other minerals, and now oil and gas. Yet it remains deeply impoverished, and this is largely due to corruption and misgovernment. DRC enjoys huge reserves of minerals, but 3/4 of the population live on less than $1 a day, and these according to figures which have been released by World Bank. So it's not guaranteed that even if DRC goes ahead and auction these oil blocks and oil exploration starts, that this is going to benefit the community. So this is a dilemma that DRC finds itself in, being one of the poorest countries and then being one of the countries which have a lot of resources. So there's a need to balance. There's a need to balance between environment and also to balance between livelihoods. So whatever decision that DRC makes should be a decision that benefits the people of the country, the large population which is living in poverty, ensure that there is equitable development, and also ensure that it protects the environment. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you for coming this far. Give us your thought about what you think about oil and gas exploration or auction of these blocks, and the opposition that is coming from different quarters, environmentalists, international organizations, and whether DRC should go ahead and exploit oil in these sensitive areas. So thank you.